Hey everybody!
Hey.
Welcome to hashtag Pastor Besties. I'm Nicole.
I'm Melissa.
And today we are talking about something so fantastic, so revolutionary. Tell us, Melissa, what it is.
Creativity!
Oh my gosh, creativity today on hashtag Pastor Besties. So, creativity in ministry. Such an important topic, yes. Because I don't see myself as a super creative person. So for me, it's very easy to get into a rut, or you just like run out of time, and if you don't plan time to be creative, for me it's like I just go to the same old because it's there, it's easy, and I'll be creative next week or the week after. So that's my experience. Now you are like the unicorn of creativity.
I mean, no,
you are. You're like one of the most creative people I know. Like, seriously.
Really?
Seriously.
I know so many more creative people. I mean, it's not a comparison. Like, everybody does their own thing. Like,
yeah, that's true. But I feel you are a very creative being. It's just sort of like oozes out of you. It's one of the things I love about you, and am envious about you. So, tell us about it. Like,
yeah.
Tell us about it.
I usually will ask people a lot of times, like I've done this a lot in sermons, how many people think they're creative? So raise your hand if you think you're creative. And like maybe half of the hands will go up, or maybe a quarter. And I'm like, that's the problem. Like, creativity is not just about creating art, whatever you determine art is. So it's not just about painting or quilting or crafting. That's not it. I mean, there can be incredible creativity and beauty in a good accountant. Like, when you watch someone play with numbers and just does it so effortlessly, it's like...
This is what I love about you.
I mean,
you see creativity in everything.
Right, because everybody's creative. Like, so even if you think, like, oh, I'm not creative, are you creating a life? Like, you're making decisions about how you're going to live your life. That's creative. You are creative. You are creative.
You are, like, blowing my mind right now. I don't know what's happening.
So, I mean, like, if you are always creating something, and we get to create with God. I mean, that's part of who God calls us to be, is to steward creation and also be fruitful and multiply. We get to create with God. And we're co-creators, which is amazing.
I do love it. Yes,
thing.
I do love that.
So I think that part of what people get bogged down with creativity is it has to be beautiful.
And have glitter.
I mean, it's a bonus, it's a plus. But so, like, I was at the Art Institute in Chicago a few weeks ago, and while I was there, I was sitting outside the bathroom, and there was a couple who looked at the sign of the bathroom, and they're like, "Is this art?" And I couldn't tell if they were being serious or not. Like, were they really like, "Is this bathroom sign art because we're in the Art Institute?" And the guy sitting next to me was like, "Oh my gosh, do you think they're serious?" I'm like, "Well, I mean..." He's like, "But it's not beautiful." I said, "Well, but does art have to be beautiful, or what is beauty?" And he was like, "I came to the Art Institute to look at art, not to philosophize. Not to be philosophical." I'm creative with my words too. And so I was like, "Maybe you shouldn't talk to me because that's kind of what's going to happen." And he was like, "Duly noted," and walked away.
See ya.
But I think that's part of it. Like, does art have to be beautiful? And then what is beautiful? And how do you just be creative? Like, how do you embrace your creativity?
You're blowing my mind right now.
Well, we all have it. We're all creative. Like, and so there's sometimes, like, when people will say something to me about, "Oh, that's so creative," I don't feel that creative all the time. Like, sometimes people are like, "That's the most creative thing I've ever heard." I'm like, that's just normal life for me. And
that's just my Tuesday.
Yeah, this is just, and I don't mean that in like a condescending sort of way. It's just like, oh, I never thought about it as like radical or revolutionary. I mean, I hold office hours in the community, and I've done that at every church. That also wasn't an original idea. I mean, that was something that like a church planter suggested. But so I hold office hours in the community, and somebody was like, that's the most revolutionary thing I've ever heard in my life.
See, I think that that's so interesting because for you, creativity just like oozes out of you, right? So I feel like, I'm not saying you don't put effort into creativity. You obviously do. But
well, yeah.
I feel like for you, and maybe this isn't true, but this is just my feeling, is that it comes naturally to you. And for me, I have to push to be creative. So, like, when I'm writing a sermon, it's just easy for me to, like, write the sermon and be done. But then I'm like, oh, like, maybe I should, like, put some pictures on the screen or have somebody, like, share their story. Like, I have to push myself to get there. It doesn't mean that I don't get there, but sometimes it means, like, I run out of time and I don't get there because
Sure.
I just didn't plan time to be creative.
Sure. Well, and so then, I mean, the other side of it, so being someone who is creative, sometimes my creativity can run away with me.
That's like the least shocking thing you've ever said.
So I don't necessarily always have that person who can rein me back in and be like, hey, come out of your special little glitter unicorn land and where we live in the real world.
You need like a tether to like the idea, and sometimes you just like are
and sometimes
free-floating.
I'm like, oh, look, we're going to go over here. I mean, I think a few weeks ago I talked about like sermonizing and how I had this sermon series that was terrible because it was supposed to be about stewardship, and I'm like, pumpkin seeds and cookies.
I don't even know what that means.
I know, exactly. That was the problem. Like, in my head, I was like, yes, this is amazing. And then as I was preaching it, I was like, come back, come back. So, I mean, I think that creativity and practicality have to go hand in hand together.
Yeah, but you don't want to stifle creativity either. So, like, sometimes you have to let yourself go so crazy and then, like, rein it back in.
Yes.
But you have to remember that reining it back in part.
Yes. And so I think that there's permission giving to be able to have that time. Like, you have to give permission to be like, I mean, sometimes when I'm working, part of working is just staring off into space. And like, so it looks like you are wasting time, Melissa. But like, I'm dreaming about, what's a sermon that I could do? What's a question that people are wrestling with? What's an art project we could work on? What's a good recipe? Yeah. So, I mean, part of it is like just letting things go. And I think as a culture and a society, we don't honor that, and we don't respect that. Like, I mean, get your head out of the clouds. Come back to earth. So
in my context, we do a quarterly creative planning meeting. So we schedule creativity, which works for me.
Yeah. No, I think you can do that. You should.
My problem is coming to that place with ideas is so hard. Now, if I'm there and we're like brainstorming with people, they tend to come a little bit more easily. But I also find that when we're just sitting in silence, everybody's like, there's silence, we need to say something, and then, you know, and then you have to like really watch yourself to not shut down somebody else's creative idea, because it's brainstorming, and you don't ever want to stifle creativity, because you never know when a crazy way out there idea might lead you to like the best idea of all time.
Yes. So I think that, so when you talk about silence too, I hate silence with a fiery burning passion of a million suns.
Me
I hate it. And also, it is super important to let things marinate in the silence. And so, like, awkward silences, they're awkward, but they're also so important, like, to let things just breathe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it does suck sometimes.
It does.
A lot of times.
It does.
And I don't like quiet ever.
If you came to one of our creative planning meetings, I would love for you to come sometime, because you would be like, and the rest of us would just be like, not that we're not creative, but I feel like maybe for our team it takes a little bit more effort. Because we have a lot of people that are very like detail-oriented, and so like you come up with a creative idea and they immediately go into, but how would that ever work? And how would we do this? And how, which is important because you need those people.
I am not a detail person.
But we don't have somebody that's like, here's ideas. Yeah. Maybe sometime I'll just have you come.
I would love that.
I'm just going to invite you. Come, eat a donut with us, share some ideas, blow our minds. and then we'll excuse you, and then we'll be like, whoa, what?
Never do that again.
No, we'll be like, we have enough ideas for the rest of time. We never have to have another creative planning meeting ever.
So I think that it's important to plan time to be creative. I mean,
Yes.
and sometimes it's that intentional time set aside, and sometimes it's just giving yourself permission throughout the day or throughout the week to be like, no, this is important. I just need to be for a few minutes.
I love that.
So
what are like some things that you have done in your ministry? Because you have some really great things going on at your church that are super outside the box creative. So why don't you talk about a couple?
Yeah. So and that's the thing too. Like they are creative, and also I'm like, but I mean, they're not always original. So I think right. I mean, original.
Nothing new under the sun. So says Solomon.
Is that who it is?
I totally just quoted scripture.
Good job, Nicole. I think that's like the 7th time we've done that, and I think you do it most of the time. I don't know. So right now we have some classes that are going on at our church on Wednesday evenings for preschool to 5th graders. We rotate between a cooking class and an art class.
I love this idea.
It's so much fun. So working it backwards, how this sort of came to be. We tested it as a VBS, to do a VBS of cooking, and we had a pretty good response. Like there was maybe 12 or so kids who were part of it, which is pretty good for a VBS for us. Our kids also have early release on Wednesdays. So here's how the creative process for me works. So our kids have early release on Wednesdays. That means they get out of school and they're out of school by 2:00. So as a church, we were like, we should do an after-school program. I even put it in the newsletter. I put it in the bulletin. I was like, we're doing an after-school program. So here's the thing. I did that without thinking about the details.
Shocking.
Rein it in.
Shocking.
And so as things got closer and we were like, oh, kids are going to be out of school at 2:00 and parents probably can't come to pick up their kids until like 5, maybe 6. So we're going to have to prepare 3 to 4 hours of content. We can't. We don't have the resources for that. Like we don't have the people resources. We don't have the space resources. We don't have the financial resources. Like we don't have that. So it was like, okay, so then what can we do?
Right.
And so we started this cooking class. So we tested it during VBS, and then it was like, let's just do it. So it was sort of just like, I just pulled the switch, and it was like, it's happening.
And you've had enormous success with it.
Yeah. Our very first class, the very first class we offered when we asked for signups for it, again, we had like maybe 12 people who were there during the summer, so I was expecting, maybe 10 to 12. We had 40 who were signed up.
I mean, no big deal. 40 kids are coming to your church.
Preschool to 5th grade to cook. And so it's kind of like, so we need some help. Like,
panic moment.
Yeah, I mean, it was panic, like, hey, come and do stuff. And there's been people who have helped in our cooking class who are like, not for me, I can't do it. Okay, that's fine.
And good for them for knowing themselves.
Absolutely. So I mean, and yeah, it's been great. So the only thing that I said for our cooking class that we needed was some child-friendly knives. We just needed those hard plastic knives. That was the only thing we needed. We had everything else in our kitchen. So it didn't take much either. So when I've talked with people, they're like, but you have to have all of this stuff. You have to have like cutting boards, and you have to have like knives, and you have to have like mixers. And I was like, yeah, eventually. But you don't have to. You just kind of start where you are. So just start somewhere and do something.
Right. And you'd probably be surprised at what people in the congregation would be willing to lend or donate.
Absolutely. So after things sort of went well with our first round of cooking class, I put together an Amazon wish list of things that we needed for cooking class. So then we moved into art class, which is a whole lot cheaper because we had almost all of the stuff. And probably you do in your churches. Like, you've probably got paint. You've probably got glitter. You've probably got glue and markers and glitter. You probably have all of those things.
And glitter.
Oh my gosh, I
need so much glitter in church ministry.
You do.
I love it.
It is important.
It is.
But so finance-wise, like there's not a ton that you may not necessarily have to do. But what else are you giving up? So sometimes we give up cleanliness.
But it's next to godliness.
I know.
So says John Wesley.
I know.
That's right. That's a John Wesley quote.
Sorry, J-Dubs. Sorry. But so that's what you've given up. Like,
right. But what a trade-off, because now you're ministering to 40, 50,
60,
175 million children.
Right. So, I mean, there's times when we're doing it that it's like, I don't know that this feels like the most creative ministry that has ever happened. And yet...
It is. It's amazing.
Yeah. I love it.
I think, there is such important creativity in taking somebody else's idea and helping it fit for your context.
Yes.
So at our church, we had a speaker, Jim Osier, come in, and he was talking to us about ways to get people in your congregation involved in hospitality. And one of the ways he said to do that was to do this hands-on mission thing right after church. So you have tables set up, so you walk out of the sanctuary, they're right there, and you say, hey, go make a sandwich for a homeless person. You put on some gloves, you get bread, cheese, bologna, bread, put it in a Ziploc bag. Hey, you can feed a homeless person with that. So I was like, hey, we want to help make our church more missional. It's something that we're really focusing on right now.
Yeah.
If I can get my people to be in hands-on mission after service, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So we started doing that. We called it a 1-minute mission because it just takes 1 minute to do after service. And we've done all sorts of things. So we started with a sandwich. We did a whole lunch one time in a bag. Oh. We've done toiletry kits to hand out to homeless people. We've done medical kits to hand out. We've done putting stamps on envelopes for nonprofits so that they don't have to do
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That's genius.
Really, when you just start asking people, like, hey, how can we help you? And they're like, well, I have 14,000 envelopes that need stamped. And I'm like, hey, we can do that in like an hour. No big deal. And people were like, stamping, like, some people skipped the service so they could stamp envelopes. But they were in mission, and it was so exciting.
Yeah.
So, I don't feel like that is super creative, but I took somebody else's idea and kind of put my own spin on it. Or the Missions Council did, So, if you can reuse somebody else's creative genius, I feel like that's being creative.
Yeah. Well, and so with creativity, too, I think the other thing that you have to give yourself permission for is to fail. I mean, I talk about failure a lot. It's not awesome. Like, it doesn't always feel good. But you have to be able to say, okay, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Let it go.
And I have a hard time with that, but you're right.
I do. I sometimes do too. It depends on what it is. Like, I can be, when it's something that's maybe my personal idea that I necessarily didn't think was a failure, and somebody else is like, I mean, sometimes it's a little bit harder.
Right.
So, which also, I think, is like, people are going to have an opinion on anything and everything.
Yes.
Anything and everything.
Really, yes.
Anything and everything.
Yep. Welcome to the church.
It's welcome to life. To be. I mean, it's life. Like, everybody does.
That's true, yes.
So you have to let those opinions not matter to what you're creating. Like, positive, negative. Let it go. Right. And just create. Just do stuff.
That's so hard to do.
It is. So for me, one of the things that changed my whole outlook on life and on creativity was Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. Changed my life.
That's a glowing review.
I'm being a little dramatic, but it's true.
But, well, do we expect anything else from you?
It's true.
No, not really.
And for that, it was giving me permission to be who I am. So for me, it was giving permission to be creative, as I already know myself to be. And also, it's giving permission for anyone to be creative. So
check out that book. I haven't read it, so I'm going to need to do that.
It has some swears in it for those who are uncomfortable, but it's the best book on the spirit and pneumatology.
If that bothers you, give your copy to Melissa. She will mark out all the swear words.
I will highlight them
with glitter highlighters.
If you're looking for something that may be a more spiritual book, that you'd like to be a little bit more Christian-y, Rob Bell's book, How to Be Here, would be the companion piece to that.
Oh, creativity!
I love it.
So hard, so wonderful, so necessary. I love it.
But you are creative. Like, you are creating a life. You know how to do this. So be who you are. If you are an accountant, be an incredible accountant. If you are a children's minister, be an incredible children's minister. If you are an engineer, be an incredible engineer. Those are all creative work that you're doing. So be creative. Be the co-creator that God invites you to be.
We'll see you guys next time.